We have two main ways of talking about the past in Dutch. The OVT, like ik werkte, or the VTT, like ik heb gewerkt. How do you know which one to use? Let's look at a few different cases in which you use the OVT and the VTT and how they contrast with each other. The first one would be mentioning a specific moment in time. If in your sentence you say when something happened, and it doesn't matter if it's a day, a moment, a year, as long as you mention the specific time, then you should probably use the OVT, like ik werkte. For example, ik was gisteren in Amsterdam. Ik was gisteren in Amsterdam. I was in Amsterdam yesterday. I mentioned yesterday, which is a specific moment in time that I mentioned explicitly, so I should use OVT, ik was, and not ik ben geweest. Now, if it doesn't matter when something happened, but you just want to say that something has happened at least once in the past, or that it was at some point in your history, but it doesn't really matter when, then it's better to use the VTT. For example, ik ben 1 keer in Denemarken geweest. Ik ben een keer in Denemarken geweest. Now, this means I've been in Denmark before, once before. It doesn't really matter when, I just want to say that I've been there before. The moment in time doesn't matter, and I also don't mention in the sentence when I was in Denmark. In the same way, if you want to express that something has never happened before, then you also use the VTT. For example, ik ben nog nooit in China geweest. Ik ben nog nooit in China geweest. I've never been to China. This seems pretty simple, right? So if you mention in the sentence when something happened in the past, then you use the OVT, like ik was. And if you don't mention when, or maybe it's never happened yet, then you use the VTT, ik ben geweest. Now those are the basics, and that indeed applies to individual situations. But if you're telling a story, it's a little bit different. For example, if you're telling a story where you're talking about the things that you did, the things that happened, like actions, then it's best to use the VTT. For example, gisteren zijn we naar Amsterdam gegaan. Daar hebben we iets gegeten. Daarna zijn we met vrienden naar een café gegaan. Now, as you can see here, I use the VTT in every single sentence. Gisteren zijn we naar Amsterdam gegaan, zijn gegaan. Daar hebben we iets gegeten, hebben gegeten. Daarna zijn we met vrienden naar een café gegaan, zijn gegaan. All of these are the VTT. And the reason for this is that they're individual actions, they're things that happened. So notice here I said gisteren, which is a specific moment in time. And in the beginning we said that if I mention the specific moment in time, like gisteren, I should use the OVT. But because here I'm telling a story about different actions, it's actually more common for us to use the VTT instead. Now, when telling a story, you're not always talking about actions. You can also describe the atmosphere, or how things are, or the background. And in that case, for these types of situations, you actually use the OVT. For example, gisteren was ik in Amsterdam. Het was koud en nat. Het heeft de hele dag geregend. Dat was niet fijn. Gisteren was ik in Amsterdam. Het was koud en nat. Twice here I used was, which is the OVT. Het heeft de hele dag geregend. Aha, here we actually have a VTT. This is an action, something that happened. Regenen, it was raining all day. So here, for the action, I use the VTT. Dat was niet fijn. Here again I switch back to the OVT, was, because it's more of a context thing. It's a background information, it's a feeling, it's not an action. So to summarize, when you're telling a story, you can sometimes switch back and forth between the OVT and the VTT. And you use the OVT when you're talking about background, context, the situation. but you use the VTT usually when you're describing actions or things that happened or things that were going on. Now these are two different situations where we can contrast the VTT and the OVT, but they're also used in two more different situations. So let's talk about those right now. The VTT is also used if you want to talk about something in the past that is still important or relevant right now. So you can still see the effect of something that happened in the past and it's relevant to something you want to say right now. For example, het heeft de hele nacht geregend, dus de straat is nat. It rained all night, so the street's wet right now. So it rained, that's something in the past. Het heeft geregend. I use the VTT here because we can see the result. The street is wet right now, so we can see the result right now. Another example, hij heeft de woonkamer versierd. Hij heeft de woonkamer versierd. He decorated the living room, for example, for a party. We can see the result right now. We're standing in the living room and we can see balloons, we can see flags, we can see all kinds of decorations that he put up. So that's why we use the VTT. We can see the result right now and we're standing in a decorated living room. So it's something that happened in the past, something he did yesterday maybe, but we can see the effects around us right now. So then it's best to use the VTT as well. The last thing I want to talk about is habits in the past. If you're talking about something that always happened or something that you always did in the past, like maybe a hobby or an activity, then you should use the OVT. For example, vroeger ging ik iedere dag zwemmen. Vroeger ging ik iedere dag zwemmen. Back in the day, I used to go swimming every day. This is a hobby you had, for example. You went swimming every day. You don't do it anymore, so it's something that was in the past, but it was a habit or a hobby or an activity that came back all the time. And so in this case, you should use the OVT, ging. Ging is the past tense of gaan in the OVT. You would not say ben gegaan here because it's a habit in the past. And for a habit in the past, you should use the OVT. So let's summarize this. If we're talking about something in the past in general, if we mention the moment, then usually we use the OVT, like ik was gisteren in Amsterdam. If we're just talking about it in general and the moment in time is completely unimportant, then we use the VTT. Ik ben in Amsterdam geweest. I've been to Amsterdam before. It doesn't matter when. I just want to share with you that it has happened before. If, on the other hand, you're telling a story, then you use the OVT for things that were in the background, maybe details about the surroundings, context, things like this. Then you use the OVT, like het was donker, de straten waren nat, it was dark and the streets were wet. This is contextual information. Now in your story, when you're talking about activities or things that were going on, then instead you use the VTT. We zijn naar het restaurant gegaan en daar hebben we iets gegeten. In the VTT. Lastly, if you're talking about habits or things that always happened in the past but don't happen anymore, then you use the OVT, like ik ging iedere dag zwemmen. Ik ging iedere dag zwemmen is a hobby you had in the past, but nowadays you don't go swimming every day anymore. If, on the other hand, you're talking about something that happened in the past but still has an important effect right now, it still has an influence on the current situation, or you can see the results, then you should use the VTT, like het heeft vannacht geregend. You can see that the streets are wet, so you use the VTT to talk about the rain last night. So there you have it. Those are the main rules for using the VTT and using the OVT. There are some other details or some situations where it doesn't really matter which one you use, but these are the most important ones. And I think if you can distinguish these at the right time, you'll sound very fluent. Now, the only challenge is getting the form right, so make sure you conjugate your OVT and your VTT correctly. For that, you can watch my videos on the OVT and my video on VTT. I hope that helps. Thank you very much for your support in the comments and also on Patreon. I hope this video was useful to you and veel succes met Nederlands leren. Bye bye!